There is a sea that the world thinks it knows. Blue water, white sand, yachts bobbing in marinas, sunburned tourists ordering gelato in the heat of August. This is the Mediterranean of postcards, of Instagram, of holiday brochures that promise paradise. But there is another Mediterranean, one where entire cities were abandoned in a single morning and never reoccupied, where islands were turned into prisons for the dying, where a volcano sleeps 17 meters beneath the surface, waiting, where a bronze Christ stands at the bottom of the sea, arms open, watching over nothing but fish and darkness. These are not the places you book a flight to see. These are the places the Mediterranean tried to forget. Some were erased by war, some by disease, some by the slow, patient revenge of geology, and some, the most disturbing ones, were simply locked up and left behind, as if the world decided it was easier to walk away than to fix what went wrong. This is a countdown of 10 forgotten Mediterranean gems, 10 places that exist right now, on the same sea you think you know, 10 places you won't believe exist until you see them. And the number one? The number one is a city that was evacuated in a single day 50 years ago and has been rotting behind barbed wire ever since. Its hotels still have towels on the racks. Its shops still have mannequins in the windows. Its people never came back. Stick around until the end. You will not believe what the Mediterranean has hidden from you. Before we begin, where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how many countries this video reaches. There is a village on the island of Chios that looks as if it was carved from the mountain itself. Anavatos sits perched on a massive granite outcrop, its stone houses blending so perfectly into the rock that from a distance, you cannot tell where the cliff ends and the buildings begin. Built during the Byzantine era, probably by the workers of the nearby Neamoni Monastery, it was designed to be invisible, a fortress village hidden in plain sight. For centuries it worked. But in 1822, the Ottoman forces landed on Chios. The massacre that followed killed tens of thousands. Anavatos, exposed on its granite pedestal, could not hide. The village was sacked. Many of its inhabitants jumped from the cliffs rather than be captured, a fall of hundreds of meters into the ravine below. Local tradition says the rocks at the base of the cliff still bear their names. The survivors never returned. An earthquake in 1881 finished what the massacre had started, collapsing what little remained standing. Today, Anavatos is a ghost. Its stone-paved streets are empty. Its church of Taxiarchis still stands, but no congregation has entered it in over a century. The wind moves through the ruins, and below the Aegean glitters, indifferent. A village carved from stone, abandoned by history, and slowly returning to the mountain that gave birth to it. This place does not want you here. On the island of Tylos, in the Dodecanese, there is a village that died not in fire or war, but in silence. Microchorio was built in the 15th century, high in the hills above the port of Livadia. For 500 years, its residents lived the same life their ancestors had lived, fishing, farming, watching the same sun set over the same sea. Then, after World War II, they simply left, not because of a disaster, not because of an invasion, because the port below was growing, and the young people wanted electricity, running water, a future that did not require climbing a hill every day. One by one, the families of Microchorio packed their belongings and walked down the mountain. They built new houses in Livadia. They opened businesses. They never looked back. The village they left behind is still there. Stone houses with wooden doors hanging open. A church with a collapsed roof. Narrow streets where nothing moves but lizards and the wind. The silence is absolute. The kind of silence that only exists in places where human voices have stopped. From the ruins, you can see the sea. You can see Livadia, the new town, where the descendants of Microchorio's families live today. The old village watches over them like a grandfather who has nothing left to say. A 500-year-old settlement, abandoned not by tragedy, but by the quiet march of progress. This place does not want you here. There is a bay on the Italian Riviera that you cannot reach by road. San Frutuoso is accessible only by boat or by a 2-hour hike through the mountains of the Portofino Peninsula. It is a pebble beach, a 10th century Benedictine abbey, a 16th century defensive tower, and a handful of stone buildings pressed against the cliffs. That is all. And yet, beneath the water, there is something that draws divers from across the world. 17 meters below the surface, in the blue-green light of the Mediterranean, stands a bronze statue of Jesus Christ. His arms are raised toward the surface. His head is tilted slightly upward. He is 2.5 meters tall, cast in solid bronze, and he has been underwater since 1954. The Christ of the Abyss was placed there by Italian diver Duilio Marcante, in memory of his friend Dario Gonzatti, who died in these waters and dies in. Every year, on the last Sunday of July, a ceremony is held. Divers descend to clean the statue, to pray, to remember. The statue has become part of the reef. Sea fans grow from its base. Fish swim through its open arms. Over 7 decades underwater, the bronze has taken on a green patina that makes it look ancient, as if it had been there for millennia, waiting for someone to discover it. Above, the Abbey of San Frutuoso stands silent. Below, Christ opens his arms to the abyss, a place where faith, the sea, and silence meet. This place does not want you here. On the night of January 14, 1968, the earth moved in western Sicily. The Bellis earthquake sequence struck with a magnitude of 6.4. 5 aftershocks above magnitude 5 followed within hours. More than 200 people died. Tens of thousands were left homeless. In the town of Poggioreale, the damage was catastrophic, but the buildings did not collapse entirely. They cracked, they tilted, they stood, wounded but standing. The residents fled. They were evacuated to tent cities, then to new housing built several kilometers away. A new Poggioreale was constructed, modern, safe, earthquake-resistant. The old town was left behind. No one ever returned. Today, the old Poggioreale is a frozen diorama of a 1960s Sicilian town. The main street is still lined with buildings. You can walk past the bar, the bakery, the town hall. Some doors are open. Some windows still have glass. A few buildings still have furniture inside. Beds, chairs, tables, abandoned midlife. Nature has begun its slow reclamation. Vines crawl up the facades. Roots push through the pavement. The bell tower still stands, but the bells no longer ring. What makes Poggioreale so haunting is not destruction. It is preservation. The town was not bombed or bulldozed. It was simply left, as if the residents stepped out for a moment and never came back. 58 years later, they still haven't. This place does not want you here. High in the Balkan Mountains at 1,441 meters above sea level, a giant concrete flying saucer sits crumbling on a peak. The Buzluga monument was built in 1981 to commemorate the founding of the Bulgarian Communist Party. It was a project of staggering ambition. 35 tons of cobalt glass were used in its mosaics, covering 937 square meters of interior wall. The structure was shaped like a disc, meant to evoke a spaceship, a future, a new world. It took 7 years to build. It was abandoned in 9. When communism fell in 1989, the monument was left to rot. The doors were left open. Vandals came. The mosaics, depicting the history of the Bulgarian Communist Party, the struggles of the working class, the triumph of the revolution, were smashed. 1/5 of them are already gone. The rest are peeling, cracking, fading. Today, Buzluga is a ruin of a future that never arrived. The wind howls through its empty halls. The floor is covered in broken glass and graffiti. The giant hammer and sickle on the ceiling stares down at nothing. And yet, it draws visitors from around the world. Not for ideology, for the sheer strangeness of its existence. A spaceship temple to a dead god, abandoned on a mountaintop, slowly returning to the earth. Geographically, it is not strictly Mediterranean, but it belongs to the same world, the world of forgotten things, of monuments to ideas that outlived their believers. This place does not want you here. We are halfway through this countdown. 10 forgotten gems, and we have only reached number 6. What is coming next is darker. What is coming next involves a volcano that nearly wiped out an island, a village of stone towers built for blood feuds, and an island where the soil is made of human ash. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that button turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments which of these places would you most want to see with your own eyes. Because the next 5 are the ones that will keep you awake at night. 15 kilometers northeast of Santorini, beneath the surface of the Aegean, there is a volcano that most tourists have never heard of. Colombo is a submarine volcano. Its crater is 1.7 kilometers wide. Its summit sits just 10 meters below the surface, close enough that boats pass directly over it every day, their passengers unaware of what sleeps beneath their keels. In 1650, Colombo woke up. The eruption was catastrophic. A column of ash rose kilometers into the air. An island of pumice briefly appeared above the waves before being eroded back into the sea. Poisonous gases, carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, rolled across the surface of the water and reached the coast of Santorini. More than 70 people died, not from lava, not from falling rocks, from asphyxiation. The air itself became unbreathable. Livestock dropped dead in the fields. Fishermen were found floating in their boats, killed by an invisible cloud. And then the tsunami came. Waves struck the coasts of Santorini, Ios, and Sikanos, destroying everything in their path. The eruption had triggered a cascade of events: underwater explosions, caldera subsidence, pyroclastic flows that scientists are still reconstructing today. In 2023, researchers used 3D seismic imaging to map the crater. What they found was sobering. Colombo has a magma chamber that is still active. It is connected to the same volcanic system as Santorini. It will erupt again. When? No one knows. The average interval between eruptions is several thousand years. But averages are not guarantees. And Colombo is not extinct. It is sleeping. Right now, at this moment, as cruise ships sail above it and tourists photograph the sunset from Santorini's caldera, Colombo waits. This place does not want you here. On the southern tip of the Peloponnese, where Greece narrows into a bony finger pointing toward Crete, there is a village that looks like a fortress. Vathia is a collection of stone tower houses, built between the 18th and 19th centuries, rising from a hillside like teeth. They are 4, 5, 6 stories tall, narrow, windowless on the lower floors with battlements on the roofs. They were not built for comfort. They were built for war. The Mani Peninsula was a lawless place for centuries. The Ottoman Empire never fully controlled it. The local clans, the Maniots, governed themselves through a system of blood feuds and vendettas that could last for generations. Every family built its tower as a defensive stronghold. Every tower had gun ports. Every tower was designed to withstand a siege. At its peak, Vathia had 70 tower houses, 4 churches, and 2 dedicated battle towers. The clans watched each other from their rooftops, waiting for the next insult, the next killing, the next cycle of revenge. The vendettas ended. The clans dispersed. The young people moved to Athens, to Australia, to America. The towers were left behind. Today, Vathia is largely abandoned. A few buildings have been restored as vacation homes. A handful of tourists climb the hill to photograph the view. But most of the towers stand empty. Their wooden doors rotted away, their interiors exposed to the wind. Standing in Vathia, you feel the weight of a world that no longer exists. A world of honor, blood, and stone, where every tower was a declaration of war, and every family lived in fear of its neighbors. This place does not want you here. There is an island in the Venetian lagoon that the boatmen refuse to approach after dark. Poveglia is small, barely 8 hectares. It sits between Venice and the Lido, visible from the water, unremarkable in appearance. But its history is so saturated with suffering that it has become known as the most haunted island in the world. The story begins in 1776, when the Venetian Republic designated Poveglia as a quarantine station for ships arriving with plague. For more than a century, anyone suspected of carrying the disease was brought here. The sick were isolated. The dying were left to die. The dead were buried in mass graves, plague pits that, according to local accounts, contain layer upon layer of human remains. Estimates vary wildly. Some sources say 16,000 died here. Others say 100,000. The truth is unknowable. What is known is that the soil of Poveglia is said to be composed of ash and bone, that when you dig, you find human remains at every depth. In 1922, the island's buildings were converted into a psychiatric hospital. It operated for 46 years. Local legend claims that a doctor working there conducted experiments on patients, lobotomies, electroshock, procedures that had no medical justification. The same legend says he eventually went mad, tormented by the spirits of plague victims and former patients, and threw himself from the bell tower. The hospital closed in 1968. The island has been abandoned ever since. 2025, a local community group called Poveglia per Tutti was granted a concession for the northern part of the island, with plans to develop it as a public park. But the main buildings remain off-limits, decaying behind fences and warning signs. The bell tower still stands. The windows are dark. The boatmen still refuse to go near it after sunset. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, Poveglia is a monument to human suffering on a scale that is difficult to comprehend. An island where the dead outnumber the living by thousands to one, where the ground itself is a grave. This place does not want you here. In the Gulf of Mirabello, off the coast of Crete, there is a small rocky island that was once a fortress, then a refuge, then a prison for the living dead. Spinalonga was fortified by the Venetians in the 16th century, its walls designed to protect the natural harbor of Alaunda. When the Ottomans took Crete, the fortress became a refuge for Muslim families fleeing persecution. And then, in 1903, it was given a new purpose. Spinalonga became a leper colony. Leprosy, Hansen's disease, was one of the most feared illnesses of the era. There was no cure, there was no treatment that worked reliably. The only solution was isolation. Anyone diagnosed with leprosy in Crete was sent to Spinalonga, permanently. At its peak, the colony housed nearly 400 people. They lived in the old Venetian buildings. They built homes, they opened shops. They married, had children, died. They created a community within the walls, a town of the condemned, living out their days in the shadow of a disease that had already taken everything from them. In 1948, the first effective treatment for leprosy was developed. Over the following years, the patients of Spinalonga were gradually cured. The last resident left in 1962. The island was abandoned. Today, Spinalonga is a tourist attraction. Ferries bring visitors from Elunda and Agios Nikolaos. You can walk through the narrow streets, see the houses, the church, the hospital. You can stand in the square where 400 people once lived, knowing they would never leave. The walls of Spinalonga witnessed something extraordinary, not just suffering, but resilience. A community built by people who had been told they were no longer human. A town that existed because the world outside did not want it. This place does not want you here. And now, the number one. Before we reveal it, check that subscribe button. If it is not read yet, fix that. And drop a comment. Which place on this list shocked you the most? We read every single one, because the number one is not a village, not a monument, not an island, it is a city. In the early 1970s, Varosha was the most glamorous resort destination in the Mediterranean. The southern quarter of Famagusta, on the eastern coast of Cyprus, Varosha was built for pleasure. Its beach was considered one of the finest in the world, golden sand stretching for kilometers, lapped by warm, clear water. Its hotels were architectural showpieces, high-rise towers of glass and concrete that would not have looked out of place in Miami or the French Riviera. Its nightclubs attracted the rich and famous. Elizabeth Taylor stayed here. Brigitte Bardot stayed here. The jet set of the 1960s and 70s came to Varosha to see and be seen. By 1974, the city had more than 100 hotels, 10,000 tourist beds, and was attracting over 700,000 visitors per year. It was the jewel of Cyprus, the Dubai of the Mediterranean, a paradise built on sand and ambition. On July 20th, 1974, the Turkish military invaded Cyprus. The residents of Varosha fled. 39,000 people, hotel workers, shopkeepers, families, children, abandoned their homes in a matter of hours. They took what they could carry. They left everything else. They believed they would return in a few days once the fighting was over. They never did. The Turkish army sealed off Varosha. They fenced it with barbed wire. They posted guards. No one was allowed in. For decades, the city sat untouched, a time capsule of 1974, frozen in the moment of its evacuation. The hotels still stand. The John F. Kennedy Hotel, the Golden Sands, the King George. Their windows are broken, their facades are cracked. Their swimming pools are empty and filled with debris. Inside, some rooms still have furniture. Some still have towels on the racks. Some still have newspapers from August 1974, yellowed and crumbling, waiting for someone to come home and read them. The shops still have mannequins in the windows, dressed in fashions that were stylish 50 years ago. The restaurants still have tables set. The streets are empty, but the city is still there. A ghost of capitalism, a monument to a conflict that never really ended. In 2020, the Turkish Cypriot authorities partially reopened Varosha. A section of the beach was opened to the public. Tourists can now swim in the same water where Elizabeth Taylor swam, with the abandoned hotels looming behind them. It is a surreal experience, sunbathing in front of a ghost town, sipping cocktails while a city rots a few meters away. But most of Varosha remains closed. Most of the buildings are still off limits. Most of the 39,000 people who fled have never returned. Some have died waiting. Some have given up hope. Some still believe, after half a century, that one day they will go home. Varosha is not just a forgotten Mediterranean gem. It is a crime scene, a wound that never healed, a city that was alive, and then was not, and no one has been able to bring it back. This place does not want you here. 10 places, 10 forgotten gems of the Mediterranean. A village carved from granite on Chios, a settlement abandoned in silence on Tylos, a bronze Christ watching over the abyss, a Sicilian town frozen in 1968, a communist monument crumbling on a Bulgarian peak, a volcano sleeping beneath the Aegean, a village of towers built for blood, an island of plague and madness, a leper colony that became a home, and a resort city that has been dead for 50 years, waiting for its people to come back. The Mediterranean is not just postcards and beaches. It is a sea of ruins, of memories, of places where time stopped and never restarted. Every coast has its ghosts. Every island has its secrets. And somewhere, right now, there is another forgotten gem, another place the world has decided not to talk about, waiting to be found, waiting to be remembered. Which of these 10 places terrified you the most? Which one would you most want to see? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe if you want to join us on the next journey. Turn on notifications so you do not miss it, because next time we are going somewhere even more impossible.